You're listening to Remotely One, a podcast that educates, entertains, and inspires you to take your life back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a former beer rep who left the warehouse to become a voice actor and digital creator.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds awesome. Let's clock in. Did I see that you're a stand-up comic? Is that true?
I did my first stand-up routine a couple weeks ago, but...
Congratulations. How are those nerves now?
Listen, so the whole thing was I've always wanted to do it just like for fun. I was like, my friend and I decided we're going to do this at like an open mic night at a brewery where there's like 6 people and no one actually cares. Awesome. And ended up doing it in front of 250 people at Comedy Zone instead, which was not my plan, but it was a lot of fun. So.
Wow. What was your opening joke? I mean, let's hear it.
You guys want to get real personal real quick?
Yeah,
absolutely.
What the hell? I
made a lot of jokes about like family stuff coming off of the holidays, how, families are crazy. But I recently changed my name back to my maiden name, and they introduced me as my, old name. And I said, no, and he was like, oh shoot, I forgot the MC. And I said, it's okay. My ex used to forget we were married too. So.
That was improv too. That was not scripted. Am I right?
No.
Oh, you're a natural. Welcome back, everyone, to Remotely One. I am your co-host, Rick Haney, joined by my esteemed colleague, Kaleem Clarkson. Hey, buddy.
Fly.
Oh, are we doing the Happy Hands Club?
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. Since you know how to find us now, do us a huge favor. Go to ratethispodcast.com/remotely one. Just leave us a review. That's all we ask. Again, ratethispodcast.com/remotely one. If you could do that, we would be ever so grateful. Since 2015, Remotely One is and continues to be one of the largest communities of remote work professionals with over 3,000 Slack members and 5,000 email subscribers. And if I'm not mistaken, that number is growing by the fifth. We're having fun already, folks. It's free to join, so go and check it out at remotely1.com. And with that out of the way, Kaleem, please do us all a favor and give us a tease or two about today's esteemed guest.
Today, I had to change him out before I got on because I was nervous. Yes, nervous about today's guest. Got a fresh shirt on to be all smooth, you know what I mean?
Put on the extra antiperspirant.
I feel great. I smell great.
You smell fantastic.
Yes. You know what, Rick? Thank you, man. I've been really trying to work on my fragrances.
And you are properly moisturized. You're good and shiny. That's good.
Yep. Feel good. But I took the sheen down a little bit. I didn't want to be too shiny.
Nope.
But today's guest, Rick, they grew up in Nebraska. Okay. Currently reside in Charlotte. What, Rick? In the Queen City, kid.
You found one of my neighbors, kid.
Come on. In the Queen City. We're definitely bringing this guest back so that we can do an on-site episode. Rick, they're a Cornhusker. They went to the University of Nebraska and they got their degree in marketing. Is it really that much corn out there, though, guest?
Yeah, pretty much more corn than people.
There it is. How
many corn parties did you have growing up in high school?
Define corn party here, Kaleem.
Okay. Is corn party a term?
I would say probably not, but we could make it one.
Okay. So I just figured, you're in the middle of a cornfield, keg, and, fires.
There's always a keg.
Definitely.
There's always a keg.
Bonfires, maybe some barn parties, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I love a good barn party.
Parties,
Uh-huh.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That makes sense. Wow. Okay, well, Rick, our guest, they worked at a little company for over 5 years as a strategic engagement manager. And that company is Microsoft, Rick. No big deal.
Well, I've heard of them.
Yes. I love our guests. They come on this show and just make us feel so confident in our abilities. After that, Rick, our guest went on to work at Salesforce, another small company you might have heard of. I mean,
Indeed.
I
have heard.
just a little bit.
Good things.
And you know what? Something most people don't know about our guest, Rick?
Lay it on me.
They did their first stand-up recently. They are a stand-up comedian.
Get
they
out.
They did their first comedy show, so the pressure, sir.
Oh, we're
pressure
going to find
is
out.
on. Yeah.
Shit's about to get real.
Our guest is the founder and CEO of Zinnia, which is an AI-powered sales preparation tool. Listeners and viewers, please give a warm welcome to Lauren Goodell! Oh, let's go!
All right, people.
Take that, Roger. You got nothing. You got
Settle down,
nothing.
folks. Hey, down in front. Settle down. Thank
Settle
you.
down, CEO.
We're supposed
Sorry
to be
about that.
professionals here. Welcome, Lauren.
Listen, I want you guys to walk into every room before me and introduce me that way. That's great.
Consider it done.
Now, Lauren, we will hold you to this
Yes.
when you do your next TED Talk.
Yep. When you come,
True. Let's go.
Kaleem's going to come up here, and we're going to have like confetti falling from the windows in Uptown, and it's going to be like a parade. Oh, it's going to be amazing. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Let's do it.
Well, welcome to the show, Lauren. It's so great to have you here. I'm happy to connect. I'm happy to connect with somebody new in Charlotte. This is great.
I know. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So we got a lot of questions, and I'm excited to learn a lot from you. But the one thing that really caught my attention from your profile is that Zinnia is heavily focused on human connection, right? But it utilizes artificial intelligence technology, which I find to be a very interesting contrast. Can you talk to us a little bit about the importance of connecting with one another, especially, while working remotely? And how does Zinnia embrace it all using AI?
Yeah. Well, actually, I was so excited to chat through this because obviously your mission is when we're all remote, wanting to bring people together and connect while we're remote first. And Zinnia's whole mission is to keep human connection at the center of every organization. And so as a recovering sales executive, we know that people buy from people they like, and people like people who are similar to them. And so I always call it like forced serendipity. When you're sitting at like a dinner party and the person next to you, you're like, it's like pulling teeth having this conversation. And like an hour and a half into it, you realize you both hiked to Machu Picchu. And all of a sudden you have like an easy conversation and you're so excited to be chatting with them. But it takes a while to find out where your commonalities lie or where you both are excited about something. What Zinnia really does is uses AI to create a holistic view of Kaleem and Rick and Lauren and layers all of those things kind of on top of each other and says, hey, here's things you guys are all passionate about, easy to talk through, and areas for you to connect. And, it helps everybody have that kind of aha moment without having to wait an hour and a half into a conversation to find that connection point.
Interesting. So how does that help you in sales preparation? Because that's kind of one of your taglines. How does this help salespeople be better salespeople?
Yeah, like I said, people buy from people they like, and people like people who are similar to them. There's tons of research about that, but we help from every single step of the sales journey. So from a very first call with somebody, being able to say like, oh, hey, Lauren, here's a conversation starter. You and Rick both live in Charlotte. You've both done stand-up comedy, right? So we can automatically, right after that, maybe have a warmer introduction. But then later on in the sales cycle, we have much more in-depth things besides just connection points like, hey, instead of reading that 180-page 10K or annual report that company has, it will transcribe all of that and say, here's some specific things out of the annual report, out of the 10K, that are similar to the product that you're selling. So here's how you can actually start entering into these conversations and how it affects the bottom line or the company's overall strategy as a salesperson.
So where does it actually pull kind of information?
Does it like scour profiles and?
Yeah.
Listen, anything that ever goes online, it stays there. One of the things that I would do when I was in sales at Microsoft was I would say, okay, well, I'm meeting with Rick today. I'm trying to sell something to him. So of course, I'm going to go to his LinkedIn profile, see where he's worked, what's important to him. I'll look on his company website, see where they're hiring. Oh, they're hiring people in sales, so they must be investing in that area. But then I take it even further and say, okay, where is Rick on Facebook? Where is Rick on Twitter, on Instagram? Oh, it looks like he just traveled to the Bahamas with his family. Well, I love the Bahamas. We can talk about that. But then I would go and listen to every podcast that Rick has been on, which apparently there's a lot of those. So,
Just a
that's a
few.
lot
Are
of
there?
so it's kind of pulling all of these different data sources and pulling it together into a single place, but also summarizing it and not just giving you the data, but also how to use that data. So for example, instead of listening to all of Rick's podcasts, we actually transcribe them and pull out talking points from them. So, hey, on that one podcast that you were on, on the 7th podcast you were on, I listened to all 7 hours. I actually would be able to just give you quick talking points of things that may be relevant to us or the conversation.
Unbelievable. Since we're talking about AI, I think, and this is where I'm interested to hear your thoughts. So many people are terrified of AI. Oh, AI is coming for our jobs. The robots are going to be doing the things that we're paid to do. They're going to get rid of us. How can we shift that perspective and focus on things like what Zinnia is doing? How do we kind of change that narrative so that people are becoming more faithful in AI and not so scared of it?
I think there's just a big gap in education. I always laugh because, I share with my parents about, what we're building here at Zinnia, what we're doing. And my mom called me one day and was like, Lauren, everyone is doing AI. You need to be really careful. I'm like, what do you mean doing AI? She's like, yeah, everyone's doing AI. Like, you need to do this really quickly or somebody else is going to do AI before you. I'm like, Mom, it's so comical.
It's the phrasing of it all. Like, they warned us about those kids who smoked drugs when we were younger.
Mother, they're no longer on the Facebook.
I know. But I say the same thing too with that of like, back in the day, my parents refused to buy anything online because they didn't trust it.
I remember that.
Oh yeah, like, oh, somebody's going to steal my credit card information. I'm not going to do this. But of course, now my parents are probably like the top user of Amazon Prime. And so I think it truly is just like an education piece of, AI is not going to take over the world. It's not going to turn around and turn into, Terminator and kill us all. But it is an opportunity. Kaleem's like, I don't know, man. Like, we got to be careful.
He's on the fence.
I mean, y'all some curious people historically. So I'm pretty sure somebody's going to do something ridiculous because we just can't help it.
Yeah.
I know, but there's ways to utilize it for good, right? So I think at the end of the day, it's just an education as to, okay, what is AI actually, and how can we actually harness it for good?
Yeah. Wow, that's an excellent viewpoint. AI is nothing new, but neither is remote work. So talk to us a little bit about how you discovered remote work, and was there a moment where you were like, oh, wow, I'm never going back to an office. This is what I want to focus on now. Was there a moment like that?
What's kind of wild for me, I have a little bit of a different journey with remote work because I started at Microsoft right out of undergrad and I moved to Dallas where the Dallas campus was. And I had an office on campus. What I realized was that nobody ever went to the office and everybody worked from home. Traffic there is awful. So, that's one thing. But right out of the gate, my first, professional career job at Microsoft was remote. And that was way before the times of being remote first.
Wow. So you were well prepared when the pandemic hit.
Yeah, that was 2013. So I've actually never had a job in my entire career path that I've had to go into an office every day.
Lucky.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So, you graduate, you're all excited, you move your life, you're like, I'm working for Microsoft. I mean, people throwing corn parties, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I mean, you're getting down at barn parties and corn parties. And then you show up and you go to your office and you notice that people aren't there. Mm-hmm. Was that articulated to you by your supervisors that, hey, you can come into the office whenever you want? Or was it more of a situation of it was just a culture that naturally kind of grew organically and it was one of those unwritten rules type of thing?
It was interesting because I knew that my hiring manager that I was working for, still one of my favorite bosses I've ever had, sat in Chicago. And, my role was to cover a certain territory. I moved into sales immediately and it was a field sales role. And so he sat in Chicago, but all of my other team members were all over the country. And so there was nobody on my direct team or in my direct leadership chain that sat in Dallas at all. And so for me, it was like, okay, well, I'm moving from Nebraska out of the state for the very first time to Dallas and moving to a city where I literally don't know a single person. And all of a sudden, I'm like, well, I can't even really meet people through work. But
Wow.
Microsoft did have a really awesome college hire program. So people that weren't in my direct org or even anybody that I would ever overlap with, there was a handful of us that luckily we got to kind of navigate, early 20s life together in Dallas.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, kind of like a new hire cohort type of thing where you're able to reach out to people. That's really neat. That's really neat. So, you work for Microsoft, you stick there for a little while, and then you head to a more sales specific organization, Salesforce. Can you talk about what the difference in the dynamics were like? I'm very curious of what was it like at Microsoft, and then what was different when you went to Salesforce?
Yeah. I mean, I would say I absolutely loved my experience at both companies. I truly thought that I was going to stay at Microsoft forever. Like, I loved working there. I loved my teams. I learned so much. The caliber of people that I worked with, I was constantly learning from the people around me. It was just an incredible organization. I had a mentor of mine that went over to Salesforce and brought me with. So that was why I ended up going. And it was completely, culture-wise, completely wildly different. Microsoft is like the old reliable, right? Like, people are there and they stay there forever. And Salesforce is a very young culture. Everyone there is, like, age-wise, much younger. But it's also a lot more kind of like lively, like throw things at the wall and see what sticks, not like, hey, this is how we've been doing it forever. But my team at Salesforce was also fully remote. I didn't have anybody in Charlotte either when I moved over there. But Salesforce also travels a lot. We had so many different conferences where I got to get together with my team. And the beauty of remote work is my direct team, like, I have friends in every state, I feel like, with Salesforce and Microsoft because of that. And so anytime I travel, I'm like, hey, I'm in Washington, and I get to catch up with an old friend, which just doesn't happen with the same, going into the office every day culture.
Talk about connection. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can build connection first virtually and then in person. That's amazing.
Where do you see remote or even hybrid work? Are they here to stay? Where do you see the future of that realm?
Yeah, now moving out of corporate into the startup world, what we care about most is, I always say, like, the number one skill that I look for in other people that we're hiring is, do I want to work with them every day? Do they have the skill of being enjoyable to be around?
Yeah.
And being around means maybe being on a call like this, right? And remote work, I think, allows us to bring the best possible person for the job on and not care about where they are, allows them a lot more flexibility. I also am very passionate about women in the workforce, and I think remote or hybrid work allows women a lot more possibilities to continue their career with childcare and things like that. So I do think remote and hybrid work is here to stay, but I think it's super vital to make sure that you're empowering those connections and not just kind of like throwing people out there. So love what you guys are doing to continue to bridge that gap for sure.
Thank you. That's amazing.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So looking at your career, there's definitely kind of a point where you made a decision of, you know what, I'm done with corporate. Then you move into startup. You become a CEO at a company. Is it Tyranny?
Ternary. Yep.
Ternary. You actually were in Atlanta, where I'm at, for a little bit. Well, part of the Entrepreneur in Resident program from Atlanta Ventures is a great program. Can you talk about what your experience was like in the Atlanta Ventures startup program? What made you make that change too? What was the exciting thing that said, I'm going to try this other completely different space?
Yeah. Like I said, loved Salesforce and Microsoft, but my last year at Salesforce, I created some goals for myself. I was like, I want to close the biggest deal this year. I want to make 7 figures, and, I want to be the top rep. And I realized I closed the biggest deal of my career. I hit all of my goals, and I was like, I'm no more fulfilled or satisfied, and I'm completely burned out. And I'm not, I don't feel challenged. I remember closing one of the biggest deals remotely, playing Candy Crush on my phone, because I'm like, I can do this in my sleep. And I was like, this is a problem. This is a problem. I don't want to be in a role where I'm no longer growing and learning. And so at the time, I started working on kind of a side project with one of my engineers from Salesforce, and that was Ternary. And it was kind of in the Web3 space, so DAO governance, NFT whitelisting, Discord monetization. And we just kind of started doing it for fun, nights and weekends, and it grew exponentially fast. And so I quit Salesforce to do that full time. We learned a ton, and through that is actually where I met Atlanta Ventures. And they were like, we don't invest in Web3, but we want to support you. So I started kind of getting to know them, having mentorship with Atlanta Ventures in general. And then we decided to exit that last company. And Atlanta Ventures, I called them up and was like, do I go back to corporate? Do I start another company? Like, what do I do? I'm just trying to figure out, my next step. And they said, hey, we have this entrepreneur in residence program. It's the Atlanta Ventures Studio, where we just pick entrepreneurs we like working with, and then we build companies alongside them. Do you want to do it? So if you're familiar with Sales Loft or Terminus, Greensea, In-Town Golf Club, some of the other ones that have come out of the Atlanta Ventures Studio. So I said, heck, let's do it. But they're incredible.
That's pretty cool.
So you've had some really great sales experience, and then you start to team up with Atlanta Ventures, and you're working or you're collaborating with other idea people. And was there a moment where you had this spark or like this light bulb over your head that kind of led you toward creating Zinnia? And when you got to that point, what was the problem that you were going to set out to solve?
Yeah. So, what's so funny is I came in and really wanted to stick in the Web3 space, and thank God I didn't, right? Like we got out of crypto right before the crash.
Crypto. I mean, it was crypto everywhere. People doing sea walks,
I don't hear about it anymore.
Yeah, broke people.
Oh my God. Yeah. I was like all in NFT world, like let's go. And
gotta get my Dogecoin.
What NFTs did you have?
So I was crypto Copen was really my favorite.
Okay.
But it's fine. It's fine. We're not talking about that. It's embarrassing.
It's fine. It's
fine. I was within
fine,
seconds of purchasing Dogecoin because one of my best friends was like all about Elon Musk. And every time Elon posted something, the stock went up. And he's like, this is it. You got to do it now. And I'm like, I can't do it, dude. Sorry.
Isn't that funny? No, I mean, I definitely think that there's a future in Web3, but I think it's going to, it's going to rise.
Of course.
Over time.
Yeah.
So I am very formulaic. I took a couple different ideas that I had and really tested them, did a lot of market research, discovery, and really landed on this future of workspace. And with that, I called up a couple hundred of my old colleagues at Microsoft Salesforce and was like, specifically managers, like what is keeping you up at night? Like what is hard for you? What stresses you out? And the biggest thing was, how do we retain our good employees? And the biggest issue that they kept coming back to is now that people are remote first, we're having this great resignation. People are going off and starting their own companies. We just don't have the same, connection, and people don't have the same loyalty as they used to. Okay. I went down this rabbit hole of research of like, okay, so what can retain people? And these in-person moments of human connection, like offsites, retreats, QBRs, sales kickoffs, all of those things kept coming up in these conversations. And I was the token female on many of my teams where I got stuck planning those sales kickoffs. And I'm like, I'm trying to deliver on a $100 million quota. Why am I the one planning this 200-person sales kickoff, right?
Because you plan weddings, obviously.
Right.
Because you're a wedding planner. You plan weddings.
Yeah.
So you must be able to plan events. Come on, people. Ridiculous.
Yes. And so, I mean, it was one of those things where it's like, nobody likes doing it. I can promise you, nobody enjoys it. Nobody has time. And so we launched Zinnia under the premise of how can we bring remote teams together in person for these sales kickoffs, QBRs, things like that, and automate it using technology.
Okay.
So what we learned, so we launched that, and basically I manually planned offsites for companies, and they paid me to do it, and I hated it. It was horrible.
Of course. So then you became a wedding planner.
Basically, yeah. This is my worst nightmare.
Gosh.
Wow.
But we started making good money, and people were like coming back, hey, we want to do this again. So we built our first version, an MVP around, okay, automating this process. And what we quickly learned is while people are willing to pay for it and they need help, there is no automation of events ever because so much nuance. And so we switched to doing customer-facing events, more like RBEs or relationship building events. Hey, a one-off happy hour is very different than a 5-day offsite with 200 people, right?
Okay.
We started planning them around the affinity profiles or demographics. So, hey, if we're going to try to get CMOs together in a room, do I really want to bring CMOs to a football box or a basketball box? Because 70% of them are female. Maybe we should rent out a dry bar salon and get them all there instead. And we're going to have a higher attendance rate. We're, playing to their affinities. And our clients loved it, but what they cared about was like, hey, we don't actually want the events, we just want the data on the people and how to better relate with them. And that's why we made this major pivot into where we are today.
They didn't want the events.
Crazy. You started as an event company and
We
people
did.
were like, this is cool, we want you to plan events. And then they saw that you were running profiles to figure out what would be the best type of events for them. Well, was it for their employees or no, just for any type of event? Like,
Most of them were for prospects. So yeah, just trying to
right,
get
right.
potential prospects leads into a room.
yeah. Wow.
That is insane.
That is insane. See, people, you have to put your product out there as an MVP and then see what happens. That's what you have to do. That is unbelievable.
So in terms of remote first companies having events and getting together, in your experience, and you could talk a little bit about, public speaking and even stand-up comedy if you like, but what is it that people are looking for, both on the employee side, but on the employer side? Where can they meet in the middle to have really effective in-person events?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of the companies that we were working with actually got rid of their corporate office space. So any corporate real estate people listening, I'm really sorry, but that's just the reality is a lot of companies started using what they were spending on office space on these in-person gatherings. And actually, Andreessen Horowitz had a podcast about specifically offsites and remote work, and they said that they recommend doing it every 3 months for remote
Once
teams.
a quarter, basically.
Once a quarter, yes. But the things that we really learned through the process is, yes, sales kickoffs, it's important to be able to train your people in person on the new products, on how to sell, on value proposition. But the most value came from the hotel bar, right? So after the end of the conference where all these people are here, the most value that people said is, I got to connect with my colleagues over a drink or dinner or whatever, because at the end of the day, everyone's tired and they're like, I don't want to go anywhere. Let's just go hang out in the hotel bar. And it becomes the moment of human connection.
That's it.
Damn.
That's it.
That's the word. Yeah.
Yeah, and we didn't have, we would always plan little outings and events, ropes courses, things like that. But everyone said the serendipity of just meeting there and the casualness was exactly what they were looking for.
Those two words have never been more powerful: human connection.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're living at a time where more people are starting to connect the dots.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more important because people are moving away from one another.
Yeah. And not only that, back to your whole point of even when you started at Microsoft and you went there and none of your team was there, but you were able to connect with other humans that weren't even part of your team. So I imagine once you started making those connections, you probably went in a few more times here and there just to, like, not even go in. Maybe you just went into town around 4:00 just to go to the bar to hang out, right? It's just really interesting that you got into this space through kind of events, seeing the human connection, but then the companies are like, nah, I don't even want it. But then now I'm assuming we're probably seeing some of those companies saying, yeah, we probably do need to connect. So what do you think about the concept of employers having some sort of social connection strategy? Like, should that be, especially if you're a remote first company, should that be top of mind? Because it feels like a lot of leaders are trying to force people back to the office and force this type of connection, when it sounds like to me from what you're saying, even at those outings and all these cool events, rope climbing, rope courses, they cared more about just hanging out at the bar and just talking.
Yeah, I think the number one thing for employer retention is truly loyalty to a company. And it's never to the company, it's to the people, right? And I left Salesforce. My boss that I had, my last boss at Salesforce, loved him dearly. I consider him a friend. He's incredible. But I remember when I called him to let him know I was quitting so I can, go all in on my company that we had started on the side, I literally cried on the phone with him because I loved him so dearly. And I literally scheduled a Zoom call with my team that I was super close with. We still have a group text 2 years later, and we're all at different companies now. But I called them and was like, guys, I'm leaving. And everyone, it was like, we're like a little family. So the thing is that the moments that we had, that was 2020. And so my team, we would have happy hours where we would drink too much champagne on Zoom calls, sitting alone in our home offices, right? Like those like social moments were what made me want to stay. So I think that has to be part of every company's culture.
Well, yeah, and I think it's really important too that it's widely said and believed that people rarely leave a job because of the job. There's no connection either with their coworkers or with the management.
Absolutely.
They don't leave the job, they leave the people. Mm-hmm. So you were very fortunate to have the opposite experience.
Yes, I was very lucky. Good people for sure.
So you're in a kind of happening city. Charlotte's pretty dope. It's new, it's fresh. You know, lots of great restaurants, a lot of cool spots.
Too many breweries.
Never enough breweries, right? You can never have too many. Kind of looking at some of the flip side of remote work. Obviously, your company is remote, but you know, you like to go into spaces. Where do you see the impact of remote work having on downtowns and cities and that vibrant space? And you were talking about commercial real estate, sorry, out there. Where do you kind of see the transformation of the city happening? Like what's next for cities, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of these co-working spaces are becoming people's true home. A lot of us saw the documentaries about WeWork spaces and, the cult-like aspects of that. But I do think that there's a lot of other ones that are popping up that are truly creating this new culture. I have a home office, but I am in a co-working space today, and I love bouncing around and getting to connect with other people when I want to. So like Industrious, or if you're familiar with Switch Yards, we're super excited for Switch Yards to come to Charlotte. But some of these that are really community-based co-working centers, I think is really going to revitalize the community building, the human connection between companies or between remote workers across company lines.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot more local, those that you mentioned were pretty big co-working companies, not as big as WeWork or whatever, but it seems like to me, when you go into each town, like you go to Austin or you go to each city, it seems like there's a lot more local co-working spots that are popping up. So I agree with you. I think we are going to see a shift. I think downtowns will become revitalized at some point. Hopefully, I hope that government leaders help people revitalize those buildings and people can maybe move into some of these high rises. But I agree. I think co-working spots are a big part of community and what could happen next.
Yeah, right there in Atlanta too. Atlanta Ventures, David Cummings, one of my investors, and John Birdsong, another partner in Atlanta Ventures, is revitalizing South Downtown Atlanta right now, bringing in co-working spaces with Atlanta Tech Village and making kind of almost like mini cohorts for different types of business focuses and trying to revitalize that in itself. So lots of that happening across the U.S. and I love seeing in Atlanta.
Yeah, one thing I'm noticing is that the term downtown is actually going away. A lot of these big cities are using psychology and changing the narrative from downtown to uptown, meaning we need to put a positive spin on this particular area. By calling it uptown, it's like more of a positive note, like we're moving up, we're going places, we're revitalizing. And it's worked very well for Charlotte.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like all the some cool little neighborhoods.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun here. So we got just a few minutes left, Lauren, and I've got to ask the one question that I know the audience is waiting for. I know Kaleem is. Can you share with us a comical or inspiring moment that you've had while working remotely?
Yes. Okay. So I have a really embarrassing story from right when 2020, everything shut down. Salesforce was like, listen, we're not traveling for customer meetings. I canceled all of my in-person customer meetings. And the world kind of shut down for a little bit. And so I was one of the people that adopted a COVID puppy. So I have 2 dogs. I love them dearly, but it was a little rescue pop-up at a grocer. It was like, hey, we're running out of space. And I was like, yes, please give me that adorable puppy.
Cuteness now.
It's so cute. And now he's 120 pounds and he's amazing. But yes, big Great Pyrenees.
That's like a pony. That's not a small dog. That's a pony.
He's a small horse. Cool. A large one. But I was like, oh, I'm working from home. It's fine. And I had a customer call and he was sleeping underneath my feet and I was obviously very distracted. And sweet baby puppy, without me knowing, walked behind me and just squatted and peed on the floor on the customer call. And she was like, "Are you?" And I was like, "What?" Like, your dog. And I turned around and I was like, I just need a minute. I am so sorry. I was so embarrassed, but at the end of the day, like, she was laughing, I was laughing. It was like this true vulnerability, human connection, right? Like this life is, but
it's real.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Was it the whole like one leg up type thing too? Like really getting it?
Yeah, it was very obvious. It was like there. It was like, okay, well, I'm gonna need a pause for a moment. Can you just give me a bit? But yeah.
Oh man.
And the whole time he's giving you the side eye, like, what are you going to do about it? You're on camera right now.
They always look too. What was he looking like? Were they looking back at the camera like, yeah, I got this?
Staring straight. It was like, Mom's not giving me attention right now, so I'm gonna show her what's up. Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
that is amazing. That is amazing.
That is so good. Yeah, I don't think we had the dog. I don't think we've had the dog pee in the background story yet.
No, we haven't.
First one.
That's a new one. That's a new one for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
First time for everything, guys. So
that's for sure, for sure. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us today, Lauren. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been a great conversation, and hopefully our paths will cross here in town. I'm so excited to meet someone from Charlotte.
Heck yeah, we got to get Kaleem in town, and we can get together in person.
Yeah, as soon as that weather starts to get warmer, we'll all get together.
Definitely.
Where can our viewers and listeners find you, Lauren?
Yes, can check me out on LinkedIn under Lauren Goodell, or my company website is getzinnia.com, GETZINNIA.com.
Awesome. Lauren Goodell, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on today. This is great.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
All right. Peace.
You've been listening to Remotely One. Visit us at remotely1.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.